Okay, so I came across a report in the BBC about transgender people having a protest about. I'm actually reading the report as I'm reading this. It is in the US, and just seeing where this protest took place. Rochester, Minnesota. Michael Hughes, a transgender man living in Rochester, Minnesota, is one of those using the tactic. On Twitter, he posts selfies with female friends stood behind him in women's public toilets. Hashtags like "We Need to Pee" and "Occupati" have been created for the campaign. Okay, what this is getting at is the issue of transgender people and public relievement facilities. WCs, whatever you want to call toilets, and the idea that they should be allowed to use whatever toilets they identify with. Hence, a transgender man should be allowed to use, that is, a woman who's had an operation to become identified as a man should be allowed to use a man's toilets, and a man who's identified as a woman, vice versa. But then some of the comments were like coming into things like we should have gender neutral toilets, and this is something I've seen directly in Newcastle University a while back. I was helping a friend with proofreading, and the toilets there had this sign up saying these are shared gender facilities. If you feel uncomfortable, imagine how transgender people feel. So it was sort of that was the message. I thought a little bit about this, and this is my position. I think that I can imagine a lot of problems with shared facilities. Well, the issue here is about the right of transgender people to use toilets, and I think, of course, that's a legitimate right. They have to use a toilet like everyone else, and they should be comfortable doing so. But I can see a lot of problems with the debate around this. Number one, shared facilities. I do see big problems with this. I think it is fundamentally wrong to expect a majority to adapt themselves to the demands of a minority. And I don't care how right-wing that sounds, it's just, to me, basic fairness. Why should the majority adapt to a minority? Now, why is this a problem? It's a problem because you can imagine certain situations that would make people very uncomfortable, and it's got nothing to do with bigotry. Take, for example, a woman who may have been a victim of rape. Now, toilets, whatever way you try to gloss it over, are somewhat intimate places because people, frankly, are getting their privates out. Okay, they're not flashing it around, but the fact of the matter is that is intimate. If a woman has been a victim of rape, I can imagine it would be very uncomfortable for her to have to use facilities that men are also using. And I'm sure there are men out there, heterosexual men, who would feel awkward using facilities that women are using because maybe they just don't feel comfortable doing it. So I think it would be fundamentally, I think the idea of gender neutral toilets is stupid because it's going to bring about these sort of problems. The notion is to stop discrimination, but what I would argue is, well, okay, I appreciate transgender people might find it awkward to use male toilets or female toilets, but if you identify yourself a certain way, then if you've went through the process of having an operation, then presumably you're going to be confident in yourself, so you shouldn't care what other people think anyway. But it's not just that, it's also the fact that if you wear a dress to say, I am a man, sending out mixed messages. I'm sorry, but it is. And what really bugs me about this whole debate is that if you have any differing view at all, then you're automatically slandered as a bigot, as a hateful person, or as a religious nut. That's another one that's out there. Well, religious nut, I'm not particularly religious. In fact, I made plenty of videos critical of religious doctrine. Bigoted, I think that's a very easy slur to throw around. I don't see how talking about women's facilities for women and men's facilities for men is in any way bigoted. that it's bullshit. Transgender people should be allowed to use whatever facilities they want, so if someone identifies himself as a woman, they should be allowed to use women's facilities, and vice versa. But where I draw a line is the idea of gender neutral facilities, because I think it is ridiculous, and I think it can cause problems such as making people very uncomfortable. I mentioned, for example, women that could have been victims of rape, but there's other scenarios. I mean, what's to stop people abusing this situation and, for example, claiming to be transgender when they're actually not, as an excuse maybe to commit sexual assault? Whereas, if the situation as it stands, if a man who is clearly a man walks into the women's toilets, he would be told to leave and so on, and rightly so, in my opinion, and vice versa. I really don't have a problem with people identifying themselves as a man or a woman if that's how they feel. That's no one's business but themselves. But when you start demanding that the majority change their ways, I think that's just fundamentally wrong. That's not equality. That's equality plus. Equality would be the right to be treated as normal people, which is the right to use whatever facilities they want. Gender neutral facilities is expecting the majority to bend to the demands of a minority, and I just think it's wrong. And no, I'm not a religious nut. And no, I don't hate transgender people. If you are a transgender person, all I'm saying is please take on board the points that I'm making about, for example, certain people that may have good reason to feel uncomfortable in that sort of intimate situation with the opposite gender, because a lot of people do. Okay, I'm a heterosexual man. I wouldn't feel comfortable using the same facilities that women use. I would feel that they're looking at me. I would just feel very uncomfortable getting out my penis in a place where women are around. I don't think that's the sign at Newcastle University said, well, imagine how transgender people feel. So the message it was getting out was that they feel uncomfortable with having to go to certain facilities. But if you have made a choice in life to change your gender because you feel more comfortable a certain way, then you cannot demand that the world changes with you. Yes, you have a right to be treated fairly. Yes, you have a right not to be a victim of hate crime or to be discriminated against. But there are certain things that I don't think it's fair to ask the majority to adapt to. I think it's ridiculous. Because where do we draw a line with this? Is it going to be a situation where everything is going to become gender neutral? And to me that's crazy, and it's actually an invitation for sexual assault, which is something that can never be justified, but it does create a situation where it's more likely. Because in gender neutral facilities, people are not so easily identified as male or female, therefore it's easier for example, a rapist to get away with going into such toilets and so on. I just think I can see a lot of problems with this. Do let me know your thoughts. And if anyone is thinking, oh, you're a hateful bigot, I utterly reject that slur. I'm not a hateful bigot. I don't hate transgender people. I wish them all the best. I think they've got a right to identify themselves as they want. What I don't think they have a right to do is demand that the majority changes. So, if you identify yourself as male, then use male toilets. That's fine. If you identify yourself as female, and you've had an operation to become a woman, you should be allowed to use women's toilets. So I support equality in terms of their right to do that. What I don't support is this notion of gender neutral toilets in order to make transgender people feel better. Because I'll tell you what it will do, it will make a lot of heterosexual people, or I shouldn't say heterosexual because actually that includes gay men and lesbian women also, who aren't transgender people. All I'm saying is I don't think a majority should be forced to change for a minority. It's ridiculous. And it's not an equality issue at all. It's frankly a cultural Marxist issue. And I'm a bit fed up with this sort of thing because it's if you even have a counter view, there isn't really a debate about this, because if you have a counter view, then you're automatically branded as a bigot. And it really irritates me. I don't know if Newcastle University had a democratic vote on that, or if they just decided to impose it. And that's what I think is fundamentally wrong. If they had a democratic vote and the student body decided yes, that's fine, we've no problem with it, I support it. But what I do resent is decisions made that are basically based on I just think it's wrong. While we're on the subject, there's increasingly debate about gender neutral toys. Now, some people would say, well, if you had a son or a daughter, how would you feel about this and that? I'm not a parent, but I will say this: if I was a parent and I had a son, if my son played with dolls, you know what, I wouldn't care. I really, really wouldn't. I wouldn't go out of my way to try and make him more manly, or, you know, I just want a happy, healthy child. But I don't think that means that companies are automatically sexist if they have toys that are blue in the boys section and toys that are pink or red in the girls section. I just think we're getting to a point where everything is becoming so damn sensitive to the political left that everything is being changed for their demands. I say the political left because I see myself as a centrist. I don't consider myself particularly a left-winger. I don't think I'm a right-winger, but I just don't think it's right that the things change because of minority demands. I think that's wrong. And if people want to portray me as whatever, as a bigot, that's a pity that people could be so narrow-minded and so short-sighted that they cannot accept a differing point of view without using gutter language. You know, just accept that not everyone thinks the same way that you do. It doesn't mean that that person is hateful or a bigot. I just think we need to look at wider issues around this rather than just say, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. Because actually, if you think closely about it, some of those things I mentioned, for example, women who may have been a victim of rape, in fact, that actually, I'll make an analogy with that. A few years ago, I done volunteer work, quite a few years ago I should say, at a women's refuge centre, women who had been victims of domestic violence. I was 14 at the time, but they had a policy whereby men over the age of 16, males over the age of 16 couldn't volunteer there because these were women who'd suffered months and years of physical abuse at the hands of boyfriends or husbands. Now, often I would say that would be a sexist policy, but actually in that situation I can understand it, because those women genuinely needed to get confidence around men. So I would make the analogy with that: if a woman has been a victim of rape, she's not going to be comfortable being asked to share facilities with men. It's just a fact. And how do you get privacy if, okay, cubicles may have a lock, but for example in the urinal, where's the privacy? There is none. So there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, and I don't think it is bigoted to talk about them. Let me know your thoughts. Are you for or against this? What are your reasons why? I'm open-minded. I'll listen to different points of view, so long as no one slanders me. Okay, thank you for watching.